Okay, I want to welcome everybody. This is our 21st broadcast. That's our first broadcast for the new year, 2019. So I hope everybody had a wonderful winter holiday break. If you did get a break, especially from work, I hope you did. And I hope you've had a wonderful new year and that January is off to a great start for you. I can't believe we're already mid through January already. So the month's going by quick and got quite a bit to cover today, but I'm going to try to keep this first session for the new year relatively short. As advertised and as promised, I'm going to be closing or near the latter portion of today's broadcast. We're going to be doing a live unveiling of a new product pre-order game, a new pre-order release that we'll be announcing, and I'll be talking more about that here in a moment. What I plan to do first, though, is obviously I want to update everybody, since it's been several weeks, on changes to our schedule. Talk about recent release, what's coming next. I believe I have one quick preview to show you as well, just as far as work in progress. So I will go ahead and plan to do that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our schedule. So let me go ahead and do that now. So hopefully now you're seeing our schedule. I'm just waiting for it to come up on Facebook Live, actually, because I want to see and make sure that it's working properly for them as well, since we have several people on Facebook right now. So there's about a 20-second delay. Also, this is a good time to mention that if you're on the broadcast right now, you can hit the Q&A button if you have any questions, especially about the new pre-order game I'm going to be announcing tonight. And there's also a chat option. You can do a chat as well. So just hit those buttons. You'll see those on the broadcast platform. For those on Facebook Live, obviously there's about a 20-second delay. So I might catch your questions a little bit after the fact, but I always try to catch your questions as well. So what I'm showing right now is our product pipeline snapshot. And the way, again, as it works, as always, is on the left side. I'm going to focus on our project pipeline for the next 3 months. I usually do about a 90-day window. So we'll talk about that as well as our recent releases. And of course, whenever we have a new pre-order announcement, we'll add that to the right column. And we haven't had any new pre-orders in the past month or so because we had that big push for the catalog that we released late last year. But we will have a new pre-order announcement today. So that means this weekend, you'll notice a new item will be showing up on the pre-order list. So what I'm actually going to start with is our most recent release. So this is a game that most people looks like they've received already. And again, that's from Gregory Smith. This is actually Gregory Smith's first two-player game. It was designed as a two-player game. It's Pacific Tide, strategic level World War II, and it's using card-driven mechanics, but where the cards are basically, it's more of a bidding system where you're deciding which cards to use, and then each year you can rebuild your cards, and actually there's a concept of repurchasing cards from the previous year. So there's always constant decisions to be made, as well as the order of the card play. And of course, since it's two-player, it's very interactive, going back and forth. One thing we did as well, in case you're not aware, for Pacific Tide, first of all, it's a very small footprint. If you look at the game map, which I'm going to show you right now, it's a half map sheet, so it's meant to fit very comfortably. And again, it's a two-player game, so one on each side. And you can see it's focused on areas for control. And one thing that was also added to the game is there is a solitaire bot system. So if you want to learn the game or just play it solitaire before you have a chance to maybe do a two-player, you can either play the Americans or the Japanese, and there's a solitaire bot that's been created, and we have a player aid card that helps drive the bot and how the card selection works, which the bot plays out. So I do want to mention that because I know solitaire games are very popular, obviously, and if you think about Gregory M. Smith, all his designs, like the Hunter, Silent Victory, his game series, which includes Ian Cooper's work on Raiders of the Deep, and then Night Fighter Ace, for example. Then we have Interceptor Ace, which will be coming next later this year. Obviously, those are all purely solitaire games with some cooperative play, team play. Competitive play is possible, but they're really 100% purebred solitaire games. This is now different. We're sort of pivoting. Greg's actually pivoting now, where this is an actual two-player title. So I don't know how many of you might have this game already or how many may have ordered it. I'd be curious to see any comments as far as if you've received the game, what you think of it. I've seen on the Console World forum, on a few times on Twitter, and then of course on our Facebook page, I've seen quite a few comments about people just playing the game. Greg's been on Board Game Geek quite active as well, because there's been some questions on the rules. No really errata to speak of, to be honest, at this point. So again, that's hats off to Hans Korting in Europe, who helped us do the rules proofing for the game. Turned out, I think, as a very solid release. And then for Pacific Tide, if you're interested in how this game system plays out, we're going to be taking it to World War II Eastern Front. And there's a pre-order title available now called Ostkrieg. So Ostkrieg is something that we have coming that's available for pre-order. And you can find it right here on our website. And by the way, this is probably an opportune time to mention we've incorporated a new web search. We've enabled a new web search on our website. So it's no secret, because I've always noticed this, as if you did a search for a game by product name, and I had a generic name in the product like war or operational or just standard name, you might get up to like 42 results back, which doesn't help at all. So it's really hard to find games. But if you notice now, it's type as you go. So I just typed the first 3 letters for Ostkrieg, and I got the first hit was Ostkrieg. And if I was searching for Pacific Tide, I typed 2 letters, only 2 letters, and Pacific Tide came to the front. So you can see here, think of anything, Lebensraum, there you go, first 3 letters. So basically our search was an issue, and you can see just by now typing a few letters, you're going to be finding things a lot faster. And we desperately needed that. I've always felt like if you can't find the games you're looking to order or to pre-order, that could be a loss for not only you as a customer, that you can't place your order and get the game. It's a loss for Compass, because we lose the opportunity to sell that game, and obviously it's a loss of revenue for the company, which we want to avoid, obviously. So there you go. So we have a new search in the same search bar, but it actually, hopefully you'll find that it works much better. By the way, I want to quickly say hello to Mark Hanna and Michael Pitts, who've joined on Facebook as well. Great to see you guys. I want to wish you a Happy New Year. And also, again, to our participants, Richard, Joel, Greg, and Daryl. So we've talked a little bit about Pacific Tide. That is our most recent release. That was our first release for 2019. So we're very happy to get that out the door. I want to spend a moment to talk about our next release, which is coming this month. It will be the last release for this month, January. And that's going to be our next issue of Paper Wars, issue 91, which is JIHAD. I had some great feedback recently on the Console World forum, where several of you reminded me that you really like to see game artwork sooner rather than later, especially if it's like a pre-order or a new release. You'd really like to see more than just maybe the box cover. So I'm going to make a concentrated effort over the next week or 2 weeks to go through our products, especially those that are on pre-order now, and those that are in artwork already. If we do have a solid, stable proof copy that doesn't have a lot of errors on it, I'll go ahead and try to make that artwork available on the website. I do try to avoid having, say, maps or counters on the website if I know there's a lot of errors, because if I release the artwork, people look at it and say, oh, it's going to be a horrible game. You've got all these misspellings for towns and all this other horrible errata. Are you going to fix this? And it's not a conversation I even want anybody to worry about, that we're going to have those issues, because yes, of course, we're going to be in the middle of fixing those things. And case in point with Fortress Europa, I'll give you a quick preview on that later. But we're going through proofing rounds, and we're always, finding corrections. So there is a bit of a risk to put artwork on the website for pre-order items that are going through proofing. But I'm gonna assume that you'd rather see it sooner rather than later, and we'll see how that works out, definitely, for the future. So that's something I recently did for Paper Wars JIHAD. So if we go to Paper Wars, before we didn't even have the front cover actually for JIHAD a few days ago. So this was my first little mini project, was, okay, what can we do to update the the sample artwork, the preview artwork for our upcoming release. So you can see we have the cover for Paper Wars. What I've also done here is I thought it would be helpful to you, and if you saw the table of contents or what's included in the magazine, to give you a better idea. Obviously, if you're getting the magazine with the game, which I think most of you do, you get Paper Wars with the game. You're going to see the featured game here is in the middle with the little box outline. You can also get the magazine only, but of course it wouldn't include the featured game with it. But I thought at least providing you the contents of what you can expect for articles would be something that might be helpful to you. Also, if we're going to have bonus counters, which could be just new counters or maybe errata-based counters for any of our games, I'll try to get information to you, post it as an image as well. I don't have that information right now. I believe we just have a few counters for just one game that we are serving up some counters for in this release of Paper Wars 91. So as soon as I have that information, I'm going to go ahead and post which game that was for Paper Wars 91, because we'll have a few counters on our counter sheet for that game. So again, getting to the great thing about you reminding me to have artwork is once I put this online, I got 2 responses right away. Thanks, John. I've now ordered Paper Wars because you put the map, counters, and information up. So that's great just to get 2 orders right off the bat for doing something we honestly should be doing anyway from a marketing perspective. So here you can see, if you haven't noticed already, JIHAD, by the way, is a new addition from Stefan Newberg out of Simulations Canada, which was one of the bigger third world country printers or publishers back in the day, in the 70s and 80s. Simulations Canada did a lot of, first they did Ziplocs, and then they did the nice thinner boxed games. And JIHAD is one of those games. So we're happy to have a new map, new counters, updated rules for JIHAD. I just have the front counter sheet. Yeah, there is a back sheet as well, but I just thought just to give you an idea of what the flavor for an Ancients game, what the counters look like in the game. Here you go right here. And actually, we have here, I believe, is the replacement counters for Absolute Victory. So I just answered the question that I was going to look up, which is what are the bonus counters in this edition that's going to be released on January 28th. And you can see at the bottom left that I'm showing right now, you see several bonus, those could be bonus or correction counters. I don't know if they're bonuses or just errata, but you can see we're getting you some counters. We're getting you 12 counters in total, it looks to be, for Absolute Victory. So if you own Absolute Victory, if you pick up this edition of Paper Wars that's coming out, you'll be getting 12 bonus counters for Absolute Victory. So I'm actually glad that I spotted that while showing the counter. So there's the information about the game for you all. So let's go ahead and, so we've seen some information now about issue 91 featuring the game JIHAD. So again, that's going to be our next release for January, on January 28th. We then have, unfortunately by the late Steve Rui, who passed away, we have his 2 games in 1. The Late Unpleasantness will be coming up first in February. We have a Euro game, Colonialism, which is the expanded 2nd edition, that's going to be released in February. And then Tai Bomba's Stalin's World War III. That actually moved up in the calendar. I didn't have that originally for February, I don't believe. So that one actually moved up in the grand scheme of things to February. So we're going to have those 3 games in February that I just mentioned. And then you can see things get pretty hot and heavy. We're going to have if things hold true here to the schedule, if anything shifts, it's going to shift, maybe in or out of the month. So we're going to have small shifts at this point. If anything moves, it's going to move and just straddle the month it's in. So our 90 days is fairly accurate in that respect. But right now, our March is looking very busy. So we've gotten, I don't know if I have the exact right order here. So you can see we have Vietnam, Rumor of War, which is the operational scale system. We have Combat, the new game that we've had a designer interview from Ross Morton that we've done. Very interesting game. We have from Gregory Smith, again, the solitaire system like the Hunters, but for World War I naval airships in Germany. Zeppelin Raider will be out in March. And then we have the long-awaited design by Stuart Tong, Blue Water Navy. So Blue Water Navy and actually I think Combat both moved up into March. So March, I thought we would have 2 titles that we would be slating for March, and I was going to predict that for throughout the year, I think our cadence is going to be around 2 releases per month. But as you can see here, the way things seem to be developing right now with our schedule is we could have a very busy March. So unless something falls into April, we have quite a few titles here. So I hope you see some of the titles you're looking forward to seeing as far as what's out of the pre-orders. I do know where we're making some really good progress on a lot of the other game projects, which are on the right side of the screen on the pre-order list. So I definitely know, we're making great progress with Fortress Europa as an example, which is the designer signature edition. And I'm going to actually show you something really quickly on Fortress Europa. So here, for example, is the game map, which is now nearly complete. But again, we're going through our third formal proofing round of this game map for Europa. And we have about 10 to 12 items we're updating in the next round. So again, this is a map I'm happy to put on the website, by the way. It's not going to be changing much from this. Now we're going through the actual proofing of it. But we got a lot of feedback. Even on Facebook, I did some informal poll questions about map textures for the terrain, which was very helpful. About units, we'll have unit counters available. The counter sheet should be available for preview in about a week or two. But I'm really happy the job that Bruce Yerian has done on the map for Fortress Europa. Again, a very classic John Edwards design. Everybody pretty much is familiar with the Avalon Hill edition of Fortress Europa. And again, 2 full maps. It's going to be 5/8 inch counters. So on the east side of the map, we have all the charts and tables you can see here. And I don't want you to be concerned that, okay, we've got 2 big maps and all the charts and tables are now on the map. And my eyes aren't that good. So now I have to look over and study the map like this, right? You're going to have to crick your neck and look at the game map to try to read what's going on. Okay, absolutely not. So what I like to do, especially for Designer Signature Edition, is give you options as players. So you don't have to look at the charts and tables on the game map. You can actually ignore them if you want, because there will be 2 sets of player aid cards for 2 players in the box that has all these charts and tables you can see running along the right edge as I scroll through here, which is the train effects chart that you can see. We have got the train effects chart. We've got the second impulse information around movement allowance chart. That's on the right side. And then, of course, combat results table. And we've got some information about crossing paratroop drop tables, etc. So all these are going to be on player aid cards, and there'll be duplicate sets of player aid cards. The only thing really that won't be on the player aid cards is you can see we have a game turn record track that runs the entire spans of the game map here. So when I reduce it in size, you'll see a 1 row of numbers going all the way down the map. That's just the only thing, is we have a game turn indicator. And most games, frankly, will have the game turn track on the map itself while you're playing it out. But I just want to make that point. We're making really good progress on the map for Fortress Europa. Just zooming in here for a moment, I hope you like what you see. A lot of attention for detail as far as the quality of how we're doing it. And again, I hope, I know a lot of people are fans of this game, and I hope you're looking forward to that game. So what I'd like to do now is just returning to Paper Wars 91. I want to give you a nice sneak peek of what you're going to find inside of Paper Wars. So we're going to go through and see what we have in the magazine for the contents. So again, this table of contents on the left side, over 54 pages. It's a average, I think the page count goes up to 60. Nearly 60 pages. You can see we got the table of contents. We have the editorial by Adam Starkweather, and then just some small errata, MacArthur game errata from the recent release of Paper Wars in the last issue. Then we had our Compass Games Expo in November on Veterans Day weekend, and we'll be doing on Veterans Day weekend, we've got a contract with the hotel, the Red Line Resort in Cromwell, Connecticut. We've got a 3-year commitment already, so we'll always be doing Veterans Day early November again in Cromwell in Connecticut. So we had over 100 attendees. So we have here a nice spread on Compass Games Expo. We've got some shots of some of the games that were being played. So did a nice little spread on that. We then have Brotherhood and Unity, which is going to be a game that's going to be coming out this year. And we've got an article by the game designer on Brotherhood and Unity. So several pages of that with card play. And then we've got an advertisement for it. We've got a preview of German naval Zeppelins. Again, that's Zeppelin Raider, starting on page 13. So that's by Gregory Smith. We then have on a battle, I think it's one of the games we're covering, Marcel Kabir. We've got, and I don't know if the pronunciation's right, but we've got a nice historical article on the actual battle that took place. And then we've got an advertisement for the John Butterfield Battle of the Bulge game that we'll have coming out later this year. A game review for Fornova, $14.95. So full spread on that. Then we've got the game rules for JIHAD. So I'm going to skip through that quickly. Some simple productivity, 2 pages worth of tracks. Then we've got a preview. Again, this was written by the late Steve Rui. This was written by him as the designer of the 2 games that are included, Gates of Richmond and If It Takes All Summer as well. So those 2 games are included here as well. And we have a nice article from Steve. Then Pacific Tide, which I recently showed you, which is our most recent release. We have expanded designer notes and play discussion by Gregory Smith. Then we get into the Muse Argonne Offensive. So again, lots of content. War for the Union designer notes by Rob Bema. That's a very popular game, doing very well. People just raving about the artwork for the game. So I want to make sure I shared that with you. Supreme Commander, this is a GMT game. So obviously we cover games by other publishers as well. Battle Hymn, which is currently out of print. So one thing I want to say here just real quickly about Battle Hymn Volume 1. It went out of print, I believe, a little over a month ago. And we will be scheduling Battle Hymn Volume 1 for reprint. So I would say look for Battle Hymn Volume 1 coming back into print, most likely around April of this year. So in several months, we'll have Volume 1 of Battle Hymn. We'll be back in print. We're going to go ahead and reprint Battle Hymn Volume 1. And of course, we've got Battle Hymn Volume 2 that's going to be coming later as well. But we are going to get that reprint in first for Battle Hymn Volume 1. So I did want to make a quick announcement about that. So nice extensive article on Battle Hymn, and then we wrap it up with Tinian, advertisement for Tinian. So again, that's a little bit more about Paper Wars. Again, I want to share that information with you. I hope that was helpful. And what I'd like to do now, really without much further ado, I want to cut right into our new pre-order game announcement. And if you're familiar with how that works, I need to do something with my other monitor here where I need to go in and I need to make it visible so you can actually see it. So let me go ahead and do that right now. So give me one moment, and it might force me to log in again to the system because it's been a few minutes since I actually was on the admin page. So let me see if it cooperates. It might not. We'll see. It's making me log in again. So let me do that first, and then we'll have it ready. So while that's happening, if you have any questions for me, since it's a new year, this is a great opportunity. If you have any Q&A or chat, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, or at least I can spot them as well on Facebook Live. So feel free to ask any questions you may have while I go ahead and make sure that we make this product now visible so we can go ahead and do that. So right now it looks like it's saving properly for me. So we'll be able to get to our new pre-order announcement. So give me one moment. I think it's going to work now. So let's go find out. Let's see if this is going to work. Let me refresh our pre-order page. And let's go right to it. So we're going to go to our pre-order page right here. So this is our new, drum roll please. This is our new pre-order announcement, our first pre-order announcement for the calendar year 2019. So at the end of this year, when I have to do a year in review, I might have a bonus question for a prize. What was the first game that I officially did a pre-order announcement about in the year 2019? And one of you is going to remember, that's online now or watching the recording, one of you is going to remember that it's the war, the Pacific, 1941 through 45. So some of you might be familiar with the war already, the Europe. That's by Ernie Copley. He's the designer. And what I'm actually going to do now is we're going to go see if we can chat with Ernie. So let me see if I can find Ernie. Ernie, are you there?
Can you hear me, John?
I can definitely hear you. Let me make sure. I hope others can hear you as well. So let me just make sure we've got you coming through. I believe we do. So I think we're good. I think we have you. So I want to welcome you, Ernie. It's a pleasure to have you here. And could you do us the favor of giving us a nice, very high-level introduction to what this is about, the War of the Pacific, 1941 to 45.
Okay, glad to do so. One of the questions I've been getting ever since the war for Europe, 39-45 came out was, when are you going to do a Pacific Companion? It's kind of a common question. And I've been working on this almost since the war Europe came out. So I've been designing this since 2012, I guess.
Oh, okay.
And a lot more intensively since the TW expansion kit came out. But high-level view, I've taken most of the TW Europe system over to the Pacific, making changes that I needed to make the Pacific feel right, because you can't just transfer everything from Europe to the Pacific and make it work.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be a big change. So let me ask you this: since you spent, sounds like on and off, you spent several years on the Pacific.
Yeah.
Could you point out maybe what you think one of your bigger designer challenges was that you encountered during the evolution of your design for the Pacific?
I think the biggest one is the one that every Pacific game designer faces, and that's that it gets to be an awful lot of Pacific games are very formulaic. I mean, the Japanese get to run wild for 6 months, like they did historically, and then they have one big battle. It goes against them, well, for or against them either way. If they take losses, they can't afford them, and the Americans can afford them. And so from late 42 onward, they just kind of slide downhill, and it's kind of tedious being the Japanese by the time you get to 1944.
Absolutely. And then, if I'm not mistaken, so please correct me if I'm wrong, Ernie, I believe at Compass Games Expo in November, so that's only a little over 2 months ago, where I believe,
Yeah.
were you doing a play test of Pacific?
Yes, absolutely. We had a really good three-person play test. The usual division is, if you do 3 players, is you do a Japanese player, of course, an American player, and then the other allied player is the British, the Russians, and the nationalist Chinese. So it actually worked out pretty well, and we played the short scenario, 42-43 turning point scenario.
Yeah.
And got that done in about 2 days, two game days.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that's pretty quick. I'm going through the product information as far as the components, just to see the scope of the game and size. So it looks like we've got 2 regular size maps and 8 full counter sheets. Oh, they're nice size, 5/8 inch counter sheets. I'm looking at the product page now, which everybody can follow along for pre-ordering, for example. So nice modest footprint. 2 full-size maps isn't all that bad for a big Pacific game.
We may end up with more than 8 full counter sheets. That's sort of a question of, that's a Mark Mahaffey question. He's just started on the map artwork.
Yep.
So I don't know whether it'll be 8 or 9 or 10. I mean, or 7. I don't know. That's an artist question.
Now, I understand with markers too, number of markers needed, etc. I know that's something that typically comes up. The number might change. Could you? One thing I'm curious about that I'm looking at on the game description right now, it mentions the deck of variant cards. Can you explain what the variant cards are all about as far as the game?
Well, they aren't variant cards per se, because it's not a card-driven game. But one of the things that you can do is vary the Pearl Harbor outcomes through basically a card play system, whereby the more tricks you win, the more favorable your modifier on the Pearl Harbor surprise turn. So it's an optional rule for people that don't want to take the time to add that element of replayability to it, just want to get right down and fight. For those folks, it's an optional rule and you can skip it. But a lot of players are very, what's the right word? Very unhappy about overly scripted games. So some of the cards are in there to make sure that the submarine warfare, the bombing campaign, especially the diplomacy stuff, and Pearl Harbor can be highly variable if you want to do it that way.
Gotcha. And I'm probably stating the obvious that this is a standalone game because you've got the war Europe that you've done, but this is obviously this is a standalone game for those that just want to do the Pacific. But I think what's really exciting to hear about, maybe you can explain, how the linkage is done or how this works. But I understand you're also providing, I don't know if it's just rules or more than rules. Maybe there's additional material, but it sounds like there's rules for
more than rules.
The 2 games together.
Yeah, it's more than rules, John. In order to make a decent linkage, you're bound to use extra counters because the scale of the games are different. Some things are obvious. I mean, the Italians are not going to end up in China and vice versa.
Right.
But the scale of the Pacific counters is different. So essentially, a unit that transfers from Europe to the Pacific is twice as strong in the Pacific to account for the way the game mechanics work and the scale of the game, and the map scale is different. So it's more than just inter-theater rules. When you put the two together, and we did this past summer at Consum World, when you put two together, you can play a complete global game, like World in Flames or World at War or whatever. You can play the complete global game, and it's a load of fun. We had a gas.
How many, that sounds great. How many players, do you remember how many players you had doing the full combined, both the War Europe and the War of the Pacific? How many players were doing that?
The ideal is 5, and we had that for Consum work. In Europe, you need 3, one for the Soviet, if you're going to do multiplayer, one for the Soviets, one for the Western Allies, one for the Axis, and in the Pacific, you need an Allied player and a Japanese player. Okay,
great. Well, now the bad news. I've got to share with everybody, in case they don't know this already, that the War for Europe, that game has recently sold out. We're completely out of stock, so I would encourage anybody to go through your brick and mortar shop if they carry a big selection of especially Compass product, or obviously online discounters. You want to check with them for the Europe, because we don't have that game in stock anymore. It's completely sold out. We do have the expansion, however, for Europe. So for those that have your game already but haven't picked up the expansion yet, I would definitely remind them to keep that in mind, and they can order direct to pick up the expansion for Europe. So now that we have the War of the Pacific that's going to be released later, I know we'll get into dates later when we get closer. It's going to be, hopefully maybe by end of the year, et cetera. We'll talk more about the release date when we get there. But I'd be really curious to know, are there any plans as far as, like you did an expansion for the Europe game of the War? Do you think there may be interest, or will there be any cause to do an expansion for the Pacific at all, you think?
My guess, John, is probably yes. It's impossible to think of everything, and anyway, as a practical matter, there's only so much material you can get in a box. I mean, there's some economics of printing and number of pages and all those business decisions Compass has to make. But for example, the game is envisioned to have 10 scenarios, but I've actually written something like 20.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's a question of which ones I think will present the game at its best,
right?
At least on initial release. But for example, I have a Nationalist China Battle of Changsha scenario for those who want to play on the mainland. But there's another couple of mainland scenarios, mainland Asia scenarios, that probably we'll just have to wait for an expansion if we do that.
Right. Well, let me close with this because again, obviously, I haven't seen the rules for the game for the Pacific or anything along those lines, and I know we have a lot of viewers either live or they'll see the recorded session. They always have a great interest in Pacific games or operational level games, strategic level games, whatever you want to call it. Is there anything about the mechanics that you'd like to share? Something that you think folks that are familiar with other games covering the Pacific might be interested to know about how you've approached the design? I just want to give you the opportunity to think about that.
Yeah, the biggest single difference is that although you have carriers, you have naval air in Europe, it's a whole different deal in the Pacific. And in the Europe game, for example, it's possible to get surprise, Toronto style, the British attack on the Italian fleet. But there really wasn't any carrier versus carrier combat worthy of the name in Europe. In Pacific, that was the main show.
Yeah.
So the carrier rules are much more, I won't say involved, but they're much more accurate, I would say, that reflect Pacific warfare. And in particular, the game system emphasizes surprise, so that it has to be possible for a good Pacific game for midway to happen. But it can't be guaranteed. It needs to be possible, just not guaranteed or even probable, but it needs to be possible. And so surprise in the naval air system is a very big deal.
Great. Well, that sounds wonderful. Well, listen, I'm really happy and excited. I could have Pacific as my first pre-order announcement for 2019. I like starting the year out right, and that's a wonderful title. So I know we're going to be definitely wanting to do updates on this game as we get closer, as it moves closer through production and when it moves to print. So Ernie, it's been a pleasure having you on the line today. Thanks for sharing with us what you've got in store for us with the War of the Pacific. Oh, one last thing before I let you go. I always try to ask, do you have any other designs in mind? Now that we've done the war, we've done the expansion kit for the war, you've got Pacific coming out, possible expansion for that, possibly. Any other designs you're thinking about working on or that you may have started already? I'm curious.
Actually, two. Thanks for asking. I have the first draft versions of, it's called Desert Generals. It is what I think the original Africa Corps, Avalon Hill Africa Corps, should have evolved into if I'd had my way with it. So I have a North Africa design in the works, and I have an Eastern Front design, which is sort of how Avalon Hill's original Stalingrad should have evolved if I'd had my way with it.
Great. Well, wonderful. Well, that we'll keep an eye on those, and those sound great. So yeah, World War II, a lot of World War II enthusiasts here, and we do publish a lot of World War II titles. Definitely, I think I covered that in our year in review. We always find World War II is obviously the era, the historical period that's most covered by most publishers every year. So happy to hear we might have a good ample supply of Ernie Copley designs, hopefully in our future.
Good. Thanks so much, John.
Well, thanks so much, Ernie. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. You take care.
Take care. Thanks.
All right. So there we go. A little bit about our new pre-order title. I hope you're interested to know more about that. I want to thank Ernie Copley again for being our guest tonight to help us introduce our new pre-order title. One thing I do want to close on, and that is for Compass Games Expo. We do now have up for pre-order our registration for Compass Games Expo 2019. As I mentioned, this is done Veterans Day every year. So we have it coming up November 8th through the 11th. If you can pencil in your calendars or mark your calendars for November 8th through the 11th, Veterans Day weekend will be our second annual event. We had well over 100 attendees for our first venue. So we've doubled the amount of floor space. So the amount of gaming space is basically doubled for 2019. So definitely we'll be able to accommodate, and we're hoping to see a nice, even, we were really pleasantly surprised getting over 100 was more than we expected. But now that we have some positive word of mouth for those that attended the first year, we certainly hope they'll be bringing their gaming buddies with them or telling others about our event. So again, it's live right now on the website under pre-orders. You'll find Compass Games Expo 2019. There is a pre-order and pay later option. So you can either do the full registration fee online and just get it paid, or you can do a pre-order option just so we can get your information. Once we've processed your order, regardless of how you do your order, whether you pay in advance or do the pre-order now, pay later, as soon as we get your order processed, say within usually 24 hours, I will then be sending out the registration form. So anybody who goes ahead and places their order for the Expo 2019 event, I'll go ahead and you'll get an email confirmation from me, hopefully within a day, and that will be a link that takes you to the official registration page for signing up. And then of course there'll be a game sign up area as well. And I know it's quite early, the convention is more than 10 months away. So you don't have to decide up front which games you're going to play. Nobody might really know up front that well, but you can always change your game choices later. One thing we do with our Compass Games Expo is when we build our page about the event, which I'll actually go to now. There's a link that goes to the actual Expo page. Right now, the link hasn't been updated yet, so the link's going to say Expo 2019, and that should be done by tomorrow. And then it will take you to this page, but actually I just got to this page from the pre-order page, from the pre-order product page. So just click on Compass Games Expo there. It will take you to our page. Gives you information about the hotel, gives you information about how to get your order in for registering for the event. Has the occupancy and room rate. It's only gone up, I think, $2 only for a single or double occupancy. Again, it includes free breakfast for those that are guests of the hotel. We have an online link that has our group code for the discount to book your hotel in advance, or you can call in and just give the group code Compass Games. So all this information's in here, including travel information. Of course, we'll have special events. We had more than 10 special events for our first year. So as we grow our list of special events, I'll be advertising and promoting those here. And then obviously the attendee roster and the game sign-up sheet. As you place your order to commit to the event, and you'll receive from me the chance to fill out the registration form. That's where we'll get all your information to start showing who's signing up as an attendee and what games people have decided that they'd like to try to play. So again, please check out, if you go to the pre-order page right now, I believe the default setting, it's going to be right under the War of the Pacific, because I think we sort by chronological order by most recent release. So here's Compass Games Expo, where you can go ahead and place the order, and then here's the information page, the overview page about the Compass Games Expo itself. So again, definitely hope that that's something you can mark your calendars for. We do plan to do an early setup before the official start date. So officially, we start November 8th, which is a Friday. But we're looking to do setup Thursday night, the 8th. And we're still talking to the hotel about when that room will free up. Right now, it looks like to be in the evening. So those that can arrive and check in on Thursday night, which will be actually November 7th, we should have the rooms available. Since we have expanded space, we have quite a big area. We should be available to open up in the early evening of Thursday, November 7th. And again, that's something I'll be providing more information on. So again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight live, and for those that are watching the recorded broadcast. Again, we're very excited about our year for 2019. As I mentioned, we're looking at a cadence of about 2 releases per month, but as you saw from the earlier segment, we might have as many as 4 releases for the month of March. So we could have a very busy first quarter for 2019. Keep in mind, I showed you the Paper Wars that's going to be coming out end of this month, with a few bonus counters or errata counters for absolute victory. I believe 12 counters in total are included in Paper Wars 91 with the game JIHAD by Stefan Newberg. Then we've got about 60 pages of various reviews, etc. So that will be our next release for January, and then we'll get into some box game releases starting with February and March. So again, I hope you enjoyed what you learned about the War of the Pacific from Ernie Copley, the designer. That's just brand new on the pre-order list, so I hope that's something you'll be interested in. And I don't believe we have any, let me see if we have any questions. I think one just came through. Yeah, is France 44 still looking good for first quarter? So no, that's going to be, that's going to come out later, especially because we're mounting the maps, which is a different production cycle and print process. So I think early on, I may have had that date for France 44 maybe a few months ago, but we actually had some delays. The artwork took a bit longer to get done. So let me tell you this about France 44, and what I'll do is in our next episode, all the components are done except for the rules booklet. So what I'll do in our next episode, our next broadcast, I'll do a full debrief on France 1944. The maps are done, the counters are done, all the player aid cards are done, everything's done. We're just working on the rules booklet right now. But then we're actually going to be printing that overseas with the mounted maps, so that's why it takes a bit longer as well. So yeah, it won't be Q1. I would call it, probably it'll be more like Q3 summer release. I'm hoping to see it as a summer release, actually, France 1944. And keep in mind with that game, it's a designer signature edition release, but one of the big enhancements that's coming to France 1944, besides we extended the game a little bit in terms of the time, some changes to additional scenarios, things like that. But we've also changed the combat system as well. So I'm remembering all these things because I'm going through wrapping up the project right now. But we have the Promise of Russia 1944 from Mark Herman is going to be coming next. And then those 2 games will link together to give you the entire theater, European theater of operations. So look, I would say let's look for France 1944, mainly because of the time for the delivery of the printed matter. Let's call that Q3 of this year. But all the components except for the rules are done, and we've just started the rules layout now. Just this week, the rules layout work has started, and Ken Dingley is helping with the rules layout. So I'm really excited about France 1944, and I will show you all the components. And as I promised earlier on, to do a better job marketing, I will also get some of those components onto the website. So right now we're probably lacking with components other than the front cover. So I'll make sure I get more out there on the website as well. So hopefully that's a fair deal. Hearts and Minds is on our pipeline. Obviously it's not in Q1. Again, it's one of these games being printed. What we do with our mounted map, just to let you all know, to understand, if it's a single map game, pretty much across the board with a very rare exception. I think Ostkrieg is the one exception, because Pacific Tide, same system, was a paper map. But if it's a one map game, off the cuff, it's going to be mounted, and the way we're handling our mounted map production, etc., is that's a whole separate production line that goes to our overseas printer. So FYI, that takes longer to get the printed material back just for those games. So I'll have to check on the Hearts and Mind delivery date. That might be Q2 of this calendar year, but I don't want to get it wrong. So I will check Joel. Joel's asking about that. I will find out about that, Joel, and I will get a date to you. But always watch our front page. I think I'm averaging an update to the front page every 10 days or so as far as schedule updates. But again, I'm focusing on the 90-day window. Anything beyond that, I'll try to give you updates on. As I mentioned, Battle Hymn reprint will be in April. That's not on our website schedule because it's outside the 90 days, but Battle Hymn's going to be coming out. Interceptor Ace from Gregory Smith is an April release. Barlev, we're shooting for April. It's a huge game, Barlev. 2 full separate maps, and then 8 counter sheets. Really, really nice design. So I've got quite a bit I'm stacking up for April, actually, which I haven't actually shown on our website schedule yet because it only goes 90 days. But I'm happy to talk about more about what's coming in Q2 and future broadcasts. Any chance, Joel's asking, for Compass to take on the Victory Games Fleet Series? So yes, the answer to that is yes, we are taking it on, Joel. So hopefully that's good news. So right now, we have not started pre-production artwork yet, but right now we're working with Joe Bukowski on his Korean War game from Victory Games as a designer signature edition release. As soon as the artist becomes available, I'm going to call that probably February or most likely March of this year. So within the next 2 months, we should be going to pre-production art on the Korean War for Joe Bukowski, Victory Games. And after that's done, I believe there was one other title we were considering from Joe Bukowski as well. But obviously Fleet Series, we already have an agreement with Joe Bukowski to do his Fleet Series. So we will definitely be doing the Fleet Series. I don't know if we're going to put all games in one box or try to separate them out. It's just going to come down to project management and what seems to make the most sense. If it makes more sense to get one game out first and then have the other series games follow, we'll find out. We haven't crossed that bridge yet, but the good news is we're building the bridge that we will be publishing the Fleet Series by Joe Bukowski. So I hope that's good news for you all. Thanks to Eric Farago, who's helping with the Third World War Series project. He's already registered for Compass Games Expo 2019, so very happy to hear that, Eric, and look forward to seeing you again in November, and I will be the one sending you the registration form for Compass Games Expo now that you've placed your order, so you'll be hearing from me again probably this weekend. So again, if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to take them now. It looks like I've answered the 3 questions, so thanks for your questions, Richard, Joel, and everybody that's on Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us today. Again, I hope you enjoyed learning about the War of the Pacific release, the pre-order that we've announced, our first one for the year. And look forward to speaking to you again. We'll probably be meeting again in about 2 weeks, and I'll definitely plan to give a nice debrief on France 1944 since all the components are already done. We're working on the rules right now, and we'll see what other items we can give you updates on as well. So again, I want to thank you all for joining tonight. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be talking to you again in about 2 weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.